Welcome, everyone, to the People Strategy Forum. Today's guest believes energy isn't just personal, it's professional. Kathy Parry is a corporate energy expert who helps teams bounce back from disruption, avoid burnout, and lead with purpose. With a background in banking and organizational change, Kathy knows how to help people thrive, even when things are messy. But her real life transformation came from a personal one, a personal moment of crisis. And we're going to talk about how that helped reshape her life and her career. Now she's a certified speaking professional, a best selling author, and a nationwide speaker helping leaders energize their people because tired teams simply just don't win. We need to make sure that people are energized. So, if you are ready to retain top performers and energize your workforce and build resilience into your culture, this episode is your power up. So, let's welcome Kathy Parry. Welcome, Kathy.
Hey, so nice to be with you. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Yes, it's great. I mean, I love to. We spent some time in the pre-show listening about your children and where they are located, and I know that one is near my location now, and so I have a deep passion for where I live in Colorado. So it's great to hear that. But I would love to hear more about what got you to where you are today, specifically that major turning point in your professional life that made you reshape your mission. So can you take us back to that moment and how that impacted your life?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, I was a bank trainer, did merger acquisition training and operations. So very frontline into when things are changing and the attitudes that people have around change. And then I took some years off to raise a family. And it was my fourth child who was diagnosed very early on with what was a devastating diagnosis. It was actually a mitochondrial dysfunction. Every cell in her body didn't turn food into energy properly. And when we got that devastating news, what we heard was best we can expect is 2-year life expectancy. So as a mama bear, I went into full on, how can we fix this mode? And I'd majored in business and had a degree in human resources, but I minored in food management because I always was fascinated by food and thought I would be in the food industry. So I just went full on into how does food work in the body? What happens to food? What does this metabolic thing mean? And I was able to get some answers for her, and she ended up living 20 years. So she was severely disabled, had, infantile really her whole life, but it changed. My business then started out as helping others feel more energized because she was thriving in this diet and what I was doing. And this is the early 2000s. So we couldn't just Google every diet and every plan out there. Like now we're all nutritional experts. But it led to me helping others feel the most energized in their life. The first book I wrote was called The Ultimate Recipe for Your Energetic Life. So really spelled out what happens at the cellular level. We all think about weight when we think about what foods we eat, but it's actually about what energizes us. And then eventually that led into energizing teams. As I was doing more and more corporate wellness, I'd go into organizations to personally energize the individuals, but then it led into, but wait, what you're talking about isn't just that kind of drain. You have, communication problem, you have this problem. So it all came full circle, and then it landed me back into helping teams stay energized.
And so and of course, I mean, that is the building block, the foundation of what creates successful people and teams and leaders overall. I mean, when we just think of the basics, getting enough sleep, exercise, eating right is the core, the foundation to having enough energy to live our lives fully and doing our best work. And so, what does powering up mean in that context, and why is it so critical for leaders today?
Well, I love to use the analogy of like the circuit. So we've got this circuit of power. I don't know if you've ever had like a major power outage, but you're frustrated because you're like, well, how do I fix it? What do I do? And so that circuit of power, you need the switch, first of all. So you need something, someone to motivate you to say, all right, we got to start the circuit of power going. I call that the implementation phase. But then you got to have the right batteries, right? So whatever that power source is. And so when I talk about this and when I train teams, we talk about the 5, 6, I've even done up to 7 when we get going really big, if we have lots and lots of time to work together. But I call them the PowerUp principles, and they're really basic, but they're the ones that we forget. Communication, which communication builds off of trust. How do we build trust on teams? How do we communicate so everyone feels heard, everyone knows the plan? And then we get into contributing. How does everyone on a team contribute? So there's not this what leads to possibly incivility. So that's another one of my batteries. How do we create a civility on teams? Then, of course, care, which, that is self-care, that is caring for your team. And then finally, I go into celebrating and acknowledging. That's a big one with me. How we acknowledge our team members gives direct correlation to how long they stay and how they feel valued. So those are my PowerUp principles. Pretty basic. We break them down. Sometimes I work with an organization for 6 months to break them all down for their leaders, but basic
that's and I think those are essentials. And I'd love to dig into those in a few minutes. And if you're listening in, go down into the chat right now and put in those elements that you think that are really powering up your team. What are the factors that you think that need to be in place there for your particular culture? But one thing before we dive into those details, Kathy, I would love to understand a little bit more about how you have witnessed your clients have significant changes, this metamorphosis of change as they've realized how to power up their teams.
Well, change is a huge one. Obviously, I love to say, it's exponential now. It used to be, there's some great videos out there about how slow things used to happen, how much time we had to adapt to something. I think about my own father who ran a business, and his first computer took up an entire room at his business, and now we just have the cell phone that can do exponentially more. Some people thrive in that constant change, but a lot of people don't. So it's really up to leaders and managers to manage the expectations around the change. And again, that kind of falls back under the communication. Are we being transparent about what this change might mean? Are we showing empathy towards our teams as far as what this change might mean? So it's amazing. And my analogy for this one, when I work with teams, is about the TV changer, or now we might say the Roku, right? Like, it makes us crazy if we can't get the battery, if it dies, right?
Yeah.
So we need to constantly be thinking about what is that next battery that we might need to manage the change. So whether it's in that core set that I just, rattled off, or maybe it's education. Maybe that's the battery that you're going to have to give your team so that they feel more comfortable with the change.
Well, let's just think about that in context of what's going on today. Artificial intelligence has been the big change factor that is causing individuals a great amount of worry and stress and burnout as they're seeing the complexities of and the speed of change come together and so forth. And so, what is the human cost of ignoring that change, that energy, resilience, and what is that human cost?
Well, the human cost is always in the end going to be burnout or walking out or stressing out, because we are not AI creatures, and we have those human emotions and that human bandwidth that goes with change. So I would encourage anyone listening, anyone who manages a team, leads a team, to think about what are those factors that could be impacting your team. Have an honest conversation with them on a scale of 1 to 10. How ready are you to embrace AI when we bring it on? And if you get a whole bunch of 2s and 3s, you better start managing the expectations about what that's going to mean on your team. it, in my opinion, and what I see in the groups that I work with, the more preparation you can do around the change, the better prepared. You can use AI to
Mm.
say, what if my team is hesitant to use AI? What can I be doing? Give me 10 ways that
Huh.
I could help my team understand AI better. Um, yeah, it's all that transparency in communicating.
Right. And I think that that highlights communication. It highlights the need to upskill and manage that change effectively. Now, I think you also mentioned trust. Trust is also an element. And so how does that play into change and really ensuring that people are energized?
Well, trust is one of the number one reasons people stay.
Mhm.
We were designed as babies to, figure out whether this is friend or foe. So right now, people on your team are trying to figure out, is AI friend or foe?
Yeah.
We're trying to get there. And if we don't build up that friend piece of the relationship, either with AI or with us as a leader or manager, it starts to erode. And it's not even, something that you may be aware of. It's actually this psychological thing that is happening at the brain level. So the way that we alleviate that and the way that we build trust, we look people in the eye, we have conversations, we listen, we're transparent with the information that we have, we show compassion, we show empathy. So there's a whole structure. And again, I think I was sharing before we started, I have a keynote session called Unlock Trust, the
Mhm.
winning combination to energize and retain teams, because most of us don't go to trust building class. It's just not this thing that's so much offered. There's some great research, though, that's been done about how important it is to have that on a team. And I've also worked with teams who totally don't build trust. One incident comes to mind, and because one of the tenets of building trust is also humility. If you mess up, say you messed up. And I did. I worked with an organization, and the CEO had to downsize one division. It wasn't a big division, it was a matter of 4 or 5 people. And they were able to work with those people and find other placements within the organization. But who it affected more was family members of, this happened to be in senior living, family members of the people who use that
Mhm.
division. And so he's like, I screwed up. I didn't win their trust over. So he went out and he ate humble pie,
No.
which is a great way, and apologized and said, I didn't realize that this was going to affect you in this way. So important things.
So is there some first steps that leaders can take in a team environment, like an exercise or something they can do with their teams to help them connect and build trust with one another?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a resource for that. And maybe I didn't include it on this, but I do have one, and it's called a Trust on Teams scorecard. And so we actually, you can do it anonymously. You could ask AI to build an anonymous survey, because when it comes to trust, that is one of those things that, people may not tell the truth if they know it's going to come back in some way. So yeah, I would just say questions like, do you feel heard? Do you feel like your opinion matters? Do you have the information you need? Without trust in organizations, we lead to gossip.
Hmm.
And I one time worked with a hospital, regional hospital, and while I was in their presence, I had people tell me, well, the way we found out about this restructuring was when they posted it, somewhere in a more like of a public forum. They're like, we didn't even know that that was happening.
Yeah.
So what happens next? People gossip. And there's a study out there that says 21% of people gossip at work
Hmm.
often, another 15% gossip occasionally, and most gossip sessions last about 15 minutes. So that
Yeah.
drives down productivity. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my when I'm not doing podcasting, my daily life is what I'm a compensation expert. So I help companies put together those pay structures that are fair and equitable. And one of the big things in my research is just understanding the ebbs and flows of the talent supply that's out there. And one thing that's been happening over the past few years is of course, there's been a lot of massive layoffs in technology, and it seems almost that some of the larger technology firms are using layoffs as a way to upskill their talent. And, well, these people aren't keeping up, so now let's go look for new ones and so forth. And it seems to erode trust and also keep people on edge. So what would you recommend for a better way for people to upskill and ensure that people are developing the right skills for the future of artificial intelligence and in fostering that re-engagement and energy in their career?
Well, I mean, that's an investment in your people that,
Mhm.
it might end up costing you something to get the education tools that they need. I feel like, again, because change is so exponential, it
Mhm.
sounds like maybe some of the instances that you've seen, it's like, well, this is just an easier fix that I can do this faster because I don't have to take the time to train somebody. But, then you're not building a culture based on loyalty. Um, when I talk about a joy-filled culture, which is
Mhm.
another one of my, sessions that I do, Joy Jolt, I talk about a joy-filled culture has purpose, loyalty, and shows gratitude.
Mhm.
So when joy-filled cultures attract great people, whereas maybe some of the things that you're talking about, they attract people that maybe get it done, but in a heartbeat will leave, the next best offer. So
Yeah.
that's a top-down cultural decision, and
Mhm.
I don't know who in an organization, makes that cultural decision. It's usually top leaders. So if that's the type of investment they want to make, I'm
Well,
thinking that culture's not too joy-filled to attract that type of person.
yeah, my guess is probably not a written strategy for those companies that they're thinking, but they're not realizing that it's draining their battery, right? And so as we're thinking about things that leaders may not be aware of that drains the battery, what are those top things that I mean, I know we spoke about a few of those things, but what are the top things that you think that are blind spots in leaders that drain that battery in their people?
Mhm. I'm going to give you an example
Mhm.
that
Okay.
might, show like exactly what you're talking about. When I talk about this, as far as energy drains, one thing that is part of the circuit is called the resistor, and the resistor is there in a circuit to modify the flow of energy. So
Mhm.
sometimes you get a storm surge or some sort of surge hits a circuit. That resistor needs to keep it modified so you don't blow circuits, right? Sometimes we want to move so fast in an organization that the energy itself is just too much. It's like we're
Mhm.
giving too much. It's kind of like you have a dog. I don't know. I have a dog, and if he eats too fast, it's not good for him. So we give him
Right.
that bowl to make it slow down. He's got to work his way through the puzzle of food.
Yeah.
Sometimes what drains the energy is just moving too fast without that plan. Just boom, 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 and we blow a circuit. So that's one way. Another way is like I say, like the squirrel that gets in your attic and chews the lines up, right?
Mhm.
So you are now have blown a circuit because an outside infiltrator has come in. So what are your outside infiltrators that you see that could be draining the energy? Is it a team with a bad attitude that's gossiping? Is it the lack of communication that's come in? Is it a competitor that's stealing your people away? What are the outside influences? So those are my two things. Moving too fast blows a circuit, and then outside influences can
Okay.
drain
So
that energy.
let's break this down to actionable steps for some of our leaders out there. So let's take a scenario. So like a leader has found they're listening in right now, and they're saying, "Geez, my team is down." We did a check in the other day, and their energy is really low, and this was shocking. And so, what are the steps that leader should take to help their people power up? in simple terms.
Hmm. Well, a good one, and depending upon what industry and what the role is to start with purpose. Do
Mhm.
they understand how their work is impacting the team, the organization, the goal? Because when we lose sight of the purpose, we start to be like, why show up? What's the
Yeah.
point? No one
Mhm.
sees what I'm doing. So, again, I have a resource on how to help your team decide what their purpose is, put it in writing. It's not like, well, I'm data analytics and I put in data and I analyze it. No, you're helping your end user. So whether it's, in banking, I'm helping somebody save for the future so that they can have a better life. Like dig them in and help them see the bigger purpose of what they're doing. That'd be a first step.
Yeah, great advice there. So, and I think that's something that a lot of employees and candidates are looking in work. I don't know. I've found in as being a pay and total rewards expert is that the cash side of the equation is becoming less and less meaningful. Of course, it is needed. Again, we all need to make a living. So there's that piece that needs to be right and at the right level. But usually, as you have that increment or marginal return on investment, as you increase, it kind of goes away and other things happen. We've experienced more people leave organizations for other reasons than pay, for purpose, mission-driven work, interesting work, uh, some job security, things like this that are beyond that. So, are you seeing those factors come and play in your world?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And that's why I really decided to focus this one session that I do on the joy. What's a
Mhm.
joy filled culture? Because I see more and more people. Again, it's not just about the money, even though
Mhm.
that's an important role that you play and you play in helping organizations figure that piece of it out. But, what am I going to burn out? Do I have to take
Yeah.
work home with me? Is that in the culture? I have a friend who worked in a very high pressure culture situation, and she did 3 to 4 hours of work every Sunday because she didn't want to show up to Monday unprepared.
Mhm.
Um, is that feeling the most joyful? At some point that burnout happens, so it's another thing to look at and consider.
As we're coming into things today, I mean, there's a lot of we talked about artificial intelligence and change, and there's conflict around the globe and so forth. And so, when you think about the most important things that leaders should be thinking about currently, right now, as a result of powering up their people and ensuring that they're resilient for the future, what are the key things that they should be thinking about to help them?
I would say just understanding your people. Where are
Mhm.
they coming from? What drives them? Why are they showing up? Are they caring for young children at home as well as an aging parent? What are their concerns? This month, I like to theme my, marketing and my months. And this month, I've just been talking about connections. How strong are your connections with your people? I mean, you don't have to get deep into their personal lives if that's inappropriate within the context of the work. But you need to understand what gets them to show up every day at
Mhm.
whatever level they are. And so just um, figuring out how to make those connections happen is so important.
Right. And so getting to know your people, I mean, that's something that I've found and I've heard many professionals say that is super important. Now, there's sometimes when leaders will reach out and they'll try to get more engagement, get it more team building, and sometimes their people are just don't show up for those events or so forth. And what should they do in situations like that?
No. Yeah, well, if it feels forced and maybe the leadership hasn't participated in those types of activities before, maybe it's a slow progression of just, hey, I'd like 15 minutes to catch up. Come to my office. They have to, then they have to show up and just say, hey, don't want anything in particular. Just want to know how you're doing, just a check in. What could I be doing to help you? Um, you know, it does need to be measured. It needs to be part of the culture of connecting. Then I have been blessed to be a part of many leadership retreats. Then some fun starts. You gather your team for a whole day or half day, and whether it be axe throwing with a couple of, added sessions on, I've done tons of sessions just on how to stay personally energized, but then we've also led full day sessions on how to build a stronger team. Those things are important.
Yes.
People view them as, hey, they're taking some time off to invest in me. And then, of course, there's always that, you look like you need a half day off. Go take it. Take it.
But
Those things can happen too.
yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. You were just saying, you're throwing axe throwing. I was just saying, okay, make sure you're throwing them in the right direction.
Right,
But
right.
paint a picture for our viewers about some of your workshops. I mean, when you're doing one of those retreats, what are they? If you're envisioning some of the most successful ones that you've done? What did they paint us a picture of what that's like?
Yeah. You know what? They're a combination of some content, some inspiration, and some fun. I think that is the best formula. I actually have a full day formula that breaks it down into when's the best time to give the content, when people are most receptive, and then when do they need like a team building activity, and then when do they just need some reflective time. Because I think, and I've shared with you, and maybe you're going to share, my leadership retreat
Oh, yes.
planning guide, because so there's the very first one: clarify your purpose. Why are you even doing this? And then I do have to select the right facilitator, because I think having someone from the outside come in that's not judging, not vested, that kind of thing is important. And then
Mhm.
the pre-event, start gathering input from leaders, what they want from it, do some pre-work, do some surveys, what do you hope to have? And then incorporate the meaningful activities. What do you want? The one thing I see, and then my final one is commit to post-retreat follow-up. Information without implementation doesn't equal any change. So,
Mhm.
but I've seen really good retreats happen, and I've seen people show up reluctantly. Um, Sometimes the preconceived notion of what it's going to be hinders how well the retreat goes. So when I work with a team, I give the pre-event, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to look like. I just recently worked with an organization, and they said, well, we asked the team, they don't want any more tasks to do. They're so overwhelmed. Don't give them any tasks. I'm like,
Mm.
got it. So that was great pre-event information. This is just going to be about energizing, bonding, and some inspiration to move forward at your best. So, yeah,
That's great.
everyone's different what they need.
And so our I guess our leaders are out there thinking about, well, I'd love to hear more about this, how to participate in one of these retreats and learn more about what you do on a regular basis, because I know you're an avid speaker, you do keynotes and so forth, so how can one of our listeners reach out to you and learn more information?
That's super easy. It's kathyparry.com. It's Perry with an A, because I always like to say Katy Perry will not get back to you. So Kathy at kathyparry.com is also my email. Super easy to get a hold of.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I know you've written a lot of books as well.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any books or reading that you would recommend as well for energizing and powering up a team?
Yeah, well, thank you for that tee up. The book that really launched a lot was, of course, the rubber band. You said it's probably going to show up backwards, but the Rubber Band Resilient Leader book, and it's about how to stretch, how that change that causes all that stretch, how to stretch without snapping. So in
Mhm.
that, we look at reacting, reframing, and re-energizing. A leader needs to manage the reactions on a team, and how they choose to react is a direct link on how the team will react. So, if you are the angry one, no one's going to react well to that one. If you're the empathizer, that might garner more reaction, that people understand to react that way. So it's really a clear path. It gives a a kind of guideline to when these things happen. There are stages. There's stages to a disruption. And I've broken them down into what happens at each stage. And, of course, in that reframing stage, it's like, okay, this thing's on us. We got to deal with it. How are we going to reframe? We'll change the way you talk about it. Don't say, oh my gosh, I got to deal with that blown computer system again today. Just say, hey, we're going to work it out and we're going to make it better so it doesn't happen next time. So just even the language and the way we energize from it. And then in my last phase is when I work in that personal energy. So you got to re-energize from it. What did you learn? How will you use it going forward? How can you help other people who might have this situation?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I love that. Great. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the audience today. And I'm hoping that people will reach out to you for getting that extra help on how to power up their team, because I think that is super important right now. As a lot of this change in the marketplace, people need to have that trust building, that faith in the future, and understanding how they can do their best work at the organization. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I hope that people understand too, just how important the piece is that you do, the compensation piece. As you said, you can't build a strong team without acknowledging what they do. So it's awesome that you have those things in place for people as well.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it's all these puzzle pieces that come together. And that's the reason why I have these conversations with experts like you, because I have one piece of that puzzle. Right. And we need to make sure that they all fit correctly, so we have a really good value proposition that attracts and motivates our people and retains our top performers. So super important.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was great to be with you.
Thanks, Kathy. And for all our listeners on the People Strategy Forum, we'll see you next week. So take care.